Today on the Digital Investors Podcast, we are answering a very common question in our community, and that is how do you sell a personally branded online business? Now, this is particularly important if you are looking to do a big exit somewhere down the track. And as we know, a lot of our listeners are looking to do exactly that. And it does bring up some interesting challenges when you have built a business around your own personal brand. Or alternatively, if you're looking to buy a personally branded online business, what are the tricks to it? How do we transition it? And what are some mistakes that can be made if you are building a personally branded business? So today, what I thought I would do is bring along a good friend of mine, Greg Elfrink from Empire Flippers, the man behind the marketing of Empire Flippers. But more importantly, the reason I've asked Greg along is he has a lot of, if you don't know Greg, he's been on a number of our podcasts and he has a lot of deep industry experience, particularly with these kinds of websites, of these situations. He has helped make over 93 millionaires. Pretty impressive, Greg. And more importantly, Empire Flippers, they have now sold over 2,500 online businesses. Now, that's a significant big data set. Greg's been around the industry for many, many years. He speaks at lots of events. He's talked at events about this very topic. So I thought, well, let's get the expert himself to talk to you guys, our listeners of the Digital Investor Podcast. So, Greg, big thank you for coming along today.
Oh, always a pleasure, Matt, to be here. So I always enjoy talking to you because you like just let me ramble and I get pretty passionate. So,
Greg,
so I
because
appreciate the platform.
I enjoy it. Likewise, Greg, I enjoy it as well because I know you offer so much value. Like you've got that deep experience. Like I said, you've seen these deals, and I didn't mention in the intro there, you yourself are personally involved in these deals. Greg isn't just the marketing person, like he knows a lot of these deals, inside and out. And particularly on this topic, Greg, you've seen this play out a lot. Personally branded websites or online businesses. Let 2,500 deals over the years. Let's start with a bit of a stat here. How many personally branded businesses have you been involved in over the years, or have you seen sell?
Yeah, as you said, I've seen this played out, but usually it doesn't play out well for the
Okay.
sellers. So usually they never even get to our marketplace because they're so hard
Wow.
to sell because we reject them, right? So over the out of the 2,500 or so businesses we've now sold, I think there's probably been like five would be a safe number to say. I can only personally think of one, and that person got a very raw deal because of the
Okay. So
personal
the
brand.
seller. So the
Yeah,
buyer,
the seller, the
though,
buyer got a great deal.
yes, nice one.
Well, maybe the buyer got a great deal because like that's one of the issues with personal brands. It depends on how well the seller lived up to their end and whether or not that buyer got a good deal. So
So this highlights, so for our listeners, this obviously highlights, are you hearing it from Greg himself? They've done 2,500 deals. This highlights the big challenge with personally branded websites, online businesses. Let's look at the issues. Why are they so difficult to sell?
So the best example, like the most clearest example of what I'm about to say, I think is like let's say you are you're a 26-year-old with a six pack. You have an info product on how to like get six pack abs in 3 months or something
All
crazy like
right.
that. You're
Yep.
doing like 150 grand a month in profit. Life is great. You try
Yep.
to sell the business. Well, this is like a multiple seven-figure business, according to just the net profit, right? But the
Yep.
people buying it probably have a beer belly or they look like me, like a bit chubby, like fat American dude. Like I can't be you. Like all your videos is like you working out and stuff like that. Like, dude,
Yep.
I can do some push-ups, but I'm not going to be impressing
Yeah.
anyone when I take over the camera, right? And if that's your only way of like getting customers, and plus inside the course as well, there's even more of you. It's like this guy is going to have a real hard time to buy this business because there's no way he can be this 26-year-old that with the six-pack abs, right? So this is the inherent problem with personal brands is the business relies so much on this personal brand, this single individual. It's kind of like combining key man risk, which is an M&A term, right?
Yep.
It's combining key man risk with a business that doesn't actually have a system of leverage, because that's the other issue with personal brands. Like
Mm.
once you get to a certain point, it becomes much harder to scale yourself. which is I think we talked about it on our last episode.
Yeah.
But it's a trap. It's a very seductive trap because people like love the whole idea of being a mini celebrity, right? So it's quite seductive, but
Yeah.
it's a trap at the end of the day. It cripples your growth.
So really, what two things come to mind for me. We are talking here for people that want to do, like I said in the intro, say a seven-figure deal somewhere, because that's
Mhm.
what you guys specialize in, and that's what Greg's talking about here. So for those of you, if you have a big goal of doing a seven-figure exit in your business somewhere down the track, then you better think very carefully if you're trying to build that business around you, your as a personal brand. And so, Greg, what comes to mind too, because you're in marketing, you're a legend in marketing. I guess what you're also referring to here in terms of the personal branding, it's not just that the business is named after the person; it's that literally all the marketing comes after, like, it is based around that one individual as well. Like saying that six pack abs example, which is a great example. You saying your definition of personal branding behind a business means it's also all the marketing. So they're not it's not leverageable outside of that person at all.
Yeah, yeah. Usually that's the what personal brands are used is for marketing, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there's probably other use cases for a personal brand for sure, but marketing is definitely the biggest one, the biggest benefit of doing a personal brand. And yeah, if everything is reliant on you, but you go sell the business, well, who isn't going with the business? You.
yeah,
You're the critical piece.
yeah,
That doesn't come with the business, right? Like that's a pretty big deal.
yeah,
So yeah, it becomes very difficult to sell. What I always tell people, and I think I even mentioned on the last podcast, is I think personal brands are great if like you're starting out, like because you speed
yeah,
run trust, right? Like
yeah,
people just trust people more than they trust brands. Though you can build a brand that has emotional relationship with people. You look at Apple, like I'm an
yeah,
Apple fan, right? Like they have
yeah,
a fanatical fan base and they're like one of the biggest corporations in the world, right?
yeah,
It's very cyberpunk ironic.
yeah,
But,
yeah. That's right.
uh, but so you can have a brand that builds relationships with people. It's just way, way harder. So I always tell people when you start out, go use and abuse the personal brand because when you start out, you're not selling the business. There's no business to
Yep,
sell even, right?
yep,
But as you get bigger and bigger, you should be making plans to step back from that personal brand and introduce new client acquisition systems that don't rely upon you. Because now you have case studies, you have data, you have revenue, you're not freaking out about like trying to pay rent. You
yep,
have good things going for you now, right? So it's time to
yep.
leverage those good things where it divorces you from the business. And like Empire Flippers actually is a great example of this. So I
Oh,
was
yeah,
Oh yeah, because I was employee number four in the business, and
yeah,
at the time, Justin and Joe, they were the face of the entire company. And
that's
one of the
right.
things they told me specifically when I came on board, like a few months in, once they realized, like, oh, okay, well, we're not going to fire this guy, he's all right, like once I passed their sniff test,
Yeah,
they were like,
that's pretty
we have
cool.
a big problem here, where it's the Justin and Joe show all the time,
Yeah, it
and
was. I
so
can
yeah,
remember those days. Yeah.
right. Which makes it a very way less valuable company if it's the Justin
Yep.
and Joe show if they're trying to sell, right? So I ended up getting on the podcast, doing the YouTube stuff, and I was already doing like guest blog posts and stuff at the time. Started speaking at conferences, and it was like sort of a plan. I sort of did it because like they really didn't want to do it anymore. Like, well, someone
Yeah.
neach to do it, like I
And
didn't
Greg,
necessarily.
it looks like you found your passion, mate. That's why you're such a good speaker. See,
You're right.
because that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I have failed so many times in public speaking. Let me tell you, I have
Yeah.
some horror stories that have made me a much better speaker for having endured that. But yeah, but now fast forward all these years, a
Yep.
lot of people think I own the company. In fact, so the new CEO, Andy, he got hired a little bit after me, director of operations guy. He's now CEO. We were trying to build up some of his brand. And funny enough, him and I this quarter, we've been trying to do this Trustpilot campaign to lift up our reviews more, right? And one of my friends put the review, the owner Greg has helped me significantly when it comes to like understanding acquisitions for agencies. I like sent the screenshot to Andy, our CEO, like
Wow.
never forget, never forget owns this thing, right? So a lot of people think I'm the owner. So they often when they hear me talk about personal brand, they're like, well, isn't that a bit hypocritical because you're like building this little personal brand. I don't really think I have one, but like, no, it's actually great for the company because I'm just like a cog in the machine, right? I'm not the buyer, I'm not the founder, right? So it's actually a net good that have all this little personal brand associated with EF. It actually
Yes.
helps EF, right? Because I would
Yeah.
most likely go with a sell, right? So
And so that brings in another point, like, as you were saying. So the good news is for our listeners, this is the really good news. You notice what Greg said there. Remember, Greg and I are talking about, for those of you that want to do the big exit. So the good news is when you're starting out, I want to reiterate something exactly what Greg said. Personal branding's fine because it's trust. Business at the speed of trust. It's a lot quicker and easier to grow a business um, uh, with trust behind you that comes from a personal brand. And the good news is, like Greg, a lot of our listeners as well, they want the lifestyle business. They're not necessarily thinking about a seven-figure exit at
sure.
this point.
Yeah.
They're happy to build a really good, high-quality lifestyle business. So they're happy to build it around them. If you're in that camp or that boat, let's so to speak, if that's your strategy and that's your goal, it's absolutely fine. So Greg and I aren't saying, personal branding's bad in that situation. It's just if you want to do the exit strategy. But as Greg pointed out, guys, and with his personal story here, this is a really good one, Greg. I want to float something out. As your business grows, because let's get into what happens here. As your business grows, like Greg said, it's got revenue. You're not struggling to make rent, but more importantly, you're starting to bring on staff, like Empire Flippers
Yep.
did with Greg all those years ago. So you can get your staff to start doing things, which is exactly what Greg did. So that now the branding of the company starts to revolve around your team members as well. So, Greg, looking at that, as if someone's goal does change and their online business starts to grow, or it might be a digital agency, exactly the same kind of concept. What's what's some smart plans if someone's what's some smart transition plans that people can make? As what have you seen work? So when you look back, when you look at these deals and you look at some of these really successful 7 and 8 figure deals that you guys have done, and obviously you can see their history. So, a bunch of them, I'm presuming, like with digital agencies, a lot of them start because of their personal branding.
Oh
What's
yeah.
been so effective to help them? Well, what are even the simple steps that people can take to transition into the business not relying on their brand? So the first one is, as you mentioned, like with Empire Flippers, staff members can help take over the promo of things. What other things have you seen work to help someone transition?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say, like, I think for most agency owners, they actually need to backtrack a bit because they tried to do this maybe a little bit too early. Like before you can, like you say you're building your brand, you're building your personal brand for your agency, right? And you're like, okay, I just heard Greg say this, I need to stop doing this suddenly.
Yeah.
But the issue is a lot of agency owners are still too much in the weeds in their own business. So really before you can get away from the personal brand, if that is your main way of tracking leads, is like you got to handle your fulfillment side and make sure there's good people there. Ideally, you're not doing the sales, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Keep that marketing engine running over here while you fix that part first. Because
Yep.
once you fix that part, then you're only doing the marketing. Now you actually have the time because it's going to be a bit of a struggle bus when you like first start doing it, right? You're going to fail, you're going to spend money, and you're going to lose money to figure out how to make it work, right? Like just like any marketing, right? It's always
Yep.
fail, 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 iterate, repeat, success,
Yep.
right? So that's the first thing. You need to give yourself time to be working on the business. So you need to have that team in your sales and fulfillment department all
Good
figured out,
advice.
whatever that might be. Once you get that, now let's look at what we got. Like at this point, you're probably at least a mid six figure agency owner, right? So
Mhm.
you probably have some decent case studies. Like let's put on our marketing hat here and think about what can we do with that doesn't require my face, right? So maybe what we create is a marketing funnel, like a lander, like download this case study as a lead magnet, something like that. Maybe we do a community offer, or, some kind of funnel that brings them in. And then maybe there's a VSL on that thank you page, which could be you at first to do it, right? But then later on, maybe you make it your sales guy who does it.
Yeah.
So then they get
Yep.
on the call is with the sales guy that they just watched on the video, right? Which should increase the conversions. But you need to figure out a funnel first that's working. So I recommend actually using your personal brand because that will help you with that. And then as that funnel scales, start removing your personal brand from the funnel.
Perfect.
So I have a buddy. We actually are still in the process of doing it. It's basically done at this point, but he was in all the videos. He was in all the sales material, all the marketing material. He used to do a lot of organic content, which I railed on a little bit, I think, in our last podcast
Yeah.
about like how it's such a hamster wheel. But he switched over to paid ads, became a multiple seven-figure agency within 2 years from doing that because of the
Wow.
scalability of it. But now he's just replacing himself where like he's not in the videos anymore. And
Yep.
like he doesn't do the sales, he doesn't do the fulfillment, he doesn't even manage the company because he has a CEO. Like he does, like don't get me wrong, he's doing stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
but now he has enough time to see like all the different holes in the process because he's not part of the process anymore, right? Which gives him a better distance to see what is working and what is not, right? But
And
that's what
now,
I
obviously,
recommend.
that's a much more saleable business, isn't it?
Oh, way
Than
more sellable. Oh yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so yeah. So it just does not revolve around. So from the point of view of like a customer, they don't even know he exists, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah. Like you don't want the customers to care about you. You want the customers to care about their problem and how you're going to solve that problem. They don't care about you,
Yeah.
right? So like a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm such a linchpin." Like, are you though? Like,
Yeah.
have you tested it without you? Because you might
That's
not
really
be as
good.
important as you think.
That is really good advice. That's big thing. So for those of you listeners who want to do a seven-figure exit down the track, think of what Greg just said. You don't want the customers caring about you. You want them caring about what your business can do for them. And that's basically what your marketing needs to focus on. So that's awesome, Greg. So when so again, to reiterate, when you're starting out and if you're doing a lifestyle business, personal branding is absolutely fantastic. It works really
Yep.
well. But when you want to go bigger, you really need to start thinking a lot bigger and transitioning out earlier. So if you're in that position now, you need to be thinking about these things that Greg is talking about. Just to flip it the other way around, Greg, a lot of listeners on the Digital Investor podcast are buyers of online businesses. And I know you mentioned digital agencies then. It's exactly the same for any online business. But for
Hmm.
our buyers of online businesses, clearly there can be some, I don't know, do we say bargains? You can get these
Yeah,
personally
you can definitely
branded
say
businesses
bargain. Yeah.
quite cheap. Let's admit it. Like you can get it quite cheap, but obviously as a buyer, then you have the challenge, don't you, of transitioning those
No.
sorts of businesses. I guess it's just exactly the same strategy.
Yeah, I mean, so when it comes to just to be real here, if a buyer looks at buying a personal brand,
Yep.
unless you're going with a broker, you're going to run into like a broker understands like
Absolutely.
how difficult it is to sell a personal brand. So by the
Yep.
time a seller with a personal brand gets on our marketplace, they're usually pretty beaten down already to like
Yep.
back to reality. But if you're in
Mm.
the a private market, so I had a guy, he sent me a sim for a software that he has. He
Yep.
wants 200 grand for it, makes good money, like actually a lot of customers because the subscription price is very low, but it's all driven by his organic social media personal brand, like every bit of it,
Mm.
right?
Yep.
And the CTO of his main company is the
Cool.
guy who built this little like offshoot app that they're trying to offload now. So there's not even like you got to be technical yourself if you're gonna like run this thing,
Yeah.
and you need to like somehow replace this guy with millions of followers, right? So like
Exactly.
so he wants basically a reasonable SaaS multiple. He wasn't unrealistic with his evaluation. If it wasn't a personal brand, if it wasn't a personal brand, it would have been a great deal. But because it's all driven by whenever he posts on say Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, it
Mm.
makes it very hard. So like in order to sell that deal, if he wanted to get the 200 grand, he would probably have to accept something he really doesn't want to accept, which would be like 30 to 50 grand up front as the down payment. And then, probably another 100 grand in seller finance over 3 years. And then probably an earnout to make sure it stays steady Eddie.
That's
And like on the earnout, you can get him closer to 200 grand faster as long as we hit these milestones, which one of the big milestones would be successfully transition away from the personal brand, right? So this is what I mean. Like personal brands are very difficult to sell. It's not impossible. You're just going to get a very raw deal in terms of, especially in your upfront amount, because like that's the riskiest moment, right?
yeah.
As a buyer, you can get great deals as long as the seller has realistic expectations. But if you're going off market, like deal sourcing your own private stuff, Usually sellers don't have realistic expectations, so that's a major hurdle.
Right. That's really good advice. And we do have, a lot of beginner to intermediate listeners here as well, and they could easily fall into that trap. So guys
Very easy.
listening,
Yeah.
I think this is really good advice from Greg. Just be very wary if you're not 100% sure of what you're doing when it comes to if you're buying online businesses and they're personally branded. If you're doing a private deal, just be very, very careful. But and that's the beauty of going through a broker because as you just heard that story is a perfect example of it. Brokers are vetting these deals and they just know the reality. It's like Greg, you're not going to want to waste time listing a business at unrealistic, selling prices. It's no good for anyone, those sorts of deals. Whereas I do like your solution though, and we've suggested this to people with personally branded businesses when they come to sell. You can do that, or as a buyer, you can insist on an earnout. So that
Yeah.
means the seller has to hang around, and basically they stick around for a couple of years to make sure it does achieve those sales. So that's one way that you can transition it. What else have you seen work? I guess the other transition way is exactly what you said. If had started the business like your friend, with bringing on team members and things. It is trickier, isn't it? Transitioning those personally branded sites. You basically have to get them at a bargain to make it worth it.
Yeah, I like you need a very strong transition plan. So I have a buddy on the other side. He sold probably three seven-figure businesses that were heavily reliant on his personal brand at the start.
Yep.
But as those three businesses grew, he did basically what I just said.
Yep.
His brand was still extremely important to those other brands, though. And when he sold those businesses, no one knew he sold because part of the deal was like you cannot mention that you sold the business
Yep.
for like 3 years.
Yeah.
And you have to agree to do X, Y, and Z during those like
Yeah.
3 years. It wasn't like he was working full time for these guys. There's three different buyers as far as I'm aware. But like he would have to like promote to his audience, once a quarter or whatever, nothing crazy, but he had to keep the presentation as if he was still the owner because people had a very emotional relationship with him. And that's what like
Perfect.
drove a lot of the business. Not all of the business. Like they had like successfully gone into doing a lot of paid media. And ironically, the agency that this guy hired for his paid media, he now owns because he thought they did such a good job. He bought them. So, which is
Right.
the so now he has another like personal branded business kind of thing
That's
going
cool.
on.
See, look,
But
for our listeners, that's cool. That's what can happen when you get good
yeah.
at buying and selling businesses. That's the sort of thing that happens. That's really
Yeah,
key
yeah. Like
story, isn't
you
it?
strike up deals, acquire partnerships, right? So he did
Yeah.
some nice little vertical acquisitions, basically. But yeah. So like did successfully debrand a lot of like the power of his personal brand through those paid media campaigns, through other marketing channels, and the personal brand was still there. It just became less and less important. Like so at Empire Flippers, for example, when I first started doing a lot of this stuff, like it was really, really powerful for us. Now it's way less powerful because we get so much traffic from SEO. Like it's still powerful, don't get me wrong, but it's diluted by the power of our other marketing mechanisms, like from
Okay.
SEO, cold email, all that kind of stuff. So we're not as reliant on Greg anymore because, as I said, Greg is hard to scale. I'm only one guy, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, that I think you highlighted in that example too, maybe a really good take-home point, Greg, for our listeners. What do you reckon? If they're buying a personally branded website, then it's really important not only to go through a broker, but to negotiate long-term transition
Yes.
period. Like we're talking possibly a year to 2 years to, and you've mentioned a couple of examples, 3 years even. And is that something that you guys can facilitate at Empire Flippers? Like, is that as a broker, is that relatively easy to, work with a buyer and a seller and make sure, the deal works over 3 years?
I wouldn't say it's easy at all.
Oh,
We can
okay. All right. This
facilitate
is
it.
good. This
We
is
can
what we
definitely
want to hear.
facilitate it. I'm not sure about the easy part.
Okay. Yep.
Uh like it's a tricky one, right? Like that's I think you as a buyer are taking on more risk by doing that. Depending on the person, it might not be that bad.
But if it's an earn out, it should be okay for the buyer because the seller doesn't get their money unless they stick around and do a post like once every quarter or something.
Sure, but they still got their down payment, so you're,
Yeah.
you tens of thousands of dollars in, depending on the business size, maybe even more. Seller financing, perhaps, but like then you also got to consider the time cost, which is something a lot of people don't think about when they buy a business. With affiliate sites, like those buyers are spoiled a bit because like there's not
Yeah.
much to running an affiliate site, right? It's probably as close to passive as you can really get in a lot of ways. But if you're buying, say, an e-commerce store, like there's a lot of logistics, there's a lot of, shipping, customer service, blah, blah, blah. There's all this extra stuff you're doing. And let's say that was all driven by a personal brand, which does happen. It's less common in the e-commerce world, but it does
Yep.
happen.
Have a good point.
Let's say you did that, right? Like, was that a better use of your time and say the $300,000 you put down for this seven-figure business versus buying an e-commerce business without a personal brand that you could have got for
Gotcha.
$300,000 down as well, right? Like,
Yep.
that's like one of the big equations you got to think about when you go into a deal like that.
Okay. So for our listeners, you can hear, hopefully you're hearing it loud and clear, guys, whether you're a buyer or seller, you do need advice when it comes to personally branded businesses if you're buying or selling them and in that and how to transition them, particularly if you're going for the big seven-figure stuff. So to reiterate, starting out, it's great. It's business at the speed of trust. You can grow a business very quickly with a personal brand. But once you're wanting to get into that seven figures and step on the accelerator, you do need to think about how you're going to transition it and also be thinking, how will you come to that exit? And obviously, the safest way to transition it is transition away from the personal brand. Exactly what Greg shared with today. Bring on new staff, bring on new marketing funnels. What was the other main one? Yeah, bring in mainly team members to replace yourself. Essentially, that's what you.
Yeah, client acquisition system,
That's it. Yeah,
faceless funnels, and then team, because
and
that's the
team.
big asset for agencies, right? Is the labor you're
Yeah,
able to recruit.
they're the big ones. Well, any online business, they're the three main things, and just be conscious of. Don't make it revolve around you and your personal social media channel or something like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
turn it into a business social media channel, or at least. But
Yeah. But you could start them in tandem, like say like you don't want to mess with your
yep,
personal brand. There's nothing stopping you from creating a faceless brand related to your agency to go and do that. In fact, it's easier today now with like AI avatars and stuff.
yeah,
It probably
it's
won't convert nearly as well as you, but like I have a buddy, he's replaced himself completely with a deep fake for his long form YouTube channel. And
right.
you can go into his comments like I miss the old version when it was a human, right? And I asked him like, dude, like is this working for you? He's like, yeah, actually, like my views are a little bit down from it, but the conversions to actually be able to, I mean, my clients have skyrocketed since I deep faked them.
What?
Like,
Wow.
what? He's like, yeah, and it frees up like probably 10 to 30 hours a month for me because I don't have to like do it. He has a
Right.
whole automated system where even scripts is like like looking at the news is going through his like AI brain that he's uploaded. Then it makes the script, then it goes to his deep fake, then it publishes. It's all like basically automatic for him.
Okay.
So yeah, like the other thing to keep in mind when you do transfer out of a personal brand to say a more faceless one, whether you're using AI or whatever, is the conversions will probably be lower. And that's okay because personal brands are great for cash flow, terrible for assets. Like if you want to build an asset, it's
Okay.
okay to lower your conversion and lower your cash flow a bit to invest in something that can make you incredibly wealthy, which is the actual assets of your business, right?
Of the business. Yeah, good advice. That's a really good point, isn't it? So again, it's for those of you that want to create that seven-figure asset and exit, this is really, really important information. And I think that's brought up something else too. As we record this, Greg, the way AI is going, within the next year, you're right, using AI, there's no excuse why you can't start transitioning your personally branded business now anyway. I like that idea and just start playing with avatars or faceless, social media channels or AI generated. Even Gary Vaynerchuk, I heard him say recently, he's saying, Greg, as we record this, Greg, even within the next 6 months, I think he said he reckons personally that over more than half the influencers that you see on Insta and stuff like that, you guys, they're all going to be fake. and he said it'll go up from there. But he reckons even now there's a few significant fake ones that people can't really tell. They can
Oh
kind of
yeah.
tell,
Oh
but
yeah.
I guess he's right, and that flows into here. So I want to say a big thank you for coming along today because hopefully our listeners have realized you're thinking about this now, guys, and you've got no excuse. You can just use AI. AI is about to make it heaps easier. Remember, AI doubles every 6 months, which is a scary thought for people that haven't thought that one through. But in this instance here, this is where AI can really help you. And I love that example of your friend there. His conversions have gone up. And he's just started with AI. Imagine 6 months' time, 12 months' time, like Gary Vaynerchuk says, if even the full-on big influencers are all going to be AI, I think
Oh
we're
yeah.
going to be fine transitioning our online businesses using AI as well. So maybe that's the way of the future. Greg, maybe I need to get you back in 6 months' time or 12 months' time, and we can be talking about great examples of what we've seen working out there with AI, people transitioning their
So
personal
here's
brands.
one quick tip for your audience. So I've deepfaked myself a little bit for our YouTube channel, but only on my YouTube shorts. So when I don't have enough time, I'll use my deepfake to create the
Oh
YouTube
yeah,
shorts.
yep.
And I was like, these are short enough. We edit them with music with like Opus clips and stuff like that. So like it's short enough, people probably won't notice. And then I looked at the stats, like, damn, the fake version of me is performing better.
Oh,
Like
no.
I don't like to see that. Why am I
Okay.
even doing this? I just was giving it
Wow.
a job.
Okay, so the fake Greg is working better online. You watch, that's what's going to happen to all of us. And so maybe Gary Vaynerchuk's right. You
No,
know,
yeah, I think he is right. I have a lot of friends. I shouldn't say a lot. I have quite a few friends that are making a lot of money from these faceless YouTube channels, faceless social media, and
wow.
some of them are using AI avatars, right? So
Okay.
there's
Well,
definitely
that
ways to do it.
well, that's going to help anyone tonight. That's sorry, today listening to this podcast. If they're thinking about transitioning out and they've inadvertently either bought or are sitting on a personally branded online business, guys, seriously, I think we've just come up with the easiest solution, Greg. Just
Uh,
implement everything that you've taught all of us tonight, but just use AI to implement it. You don't worry about, you don't even need real humans as part of your team members now. You can just use AI to create multiple
uh,
avatars in your business and you can make your business look even bigger than it is. I
will
mean,
say one thing because I know a lot of people, especially when you start out, your AI stuff is probably going to be a bit cringe, and you're like, I don't want that affecting the brand. Just create a satellite brand. Businesses do it all the time. So
yeah,
like,
that's good.
if you have a marketing agency, maybe you have like local marketers, Sydney, or you make a cooler name than that. But
Yeah.
like as the like
That's
where
pretty
the AI
cool.
avatars existing,
Yep.
right? So like you don't have to like even expose that as related to your brand until you kind of like figure it out, right?
That is cool. Yeah. So you could you could test it out on a satellite business,
Yeah.
and that in and of itself, what if that takes off for you and can, like
Oh,
Greg
even
said, and
better.
you,
Because
yeah,
that was a
and
marketing channel for a lot of different businesses, but
that
you
would be
did great.
scary, wouldn't
So
it? You watch, that's what'll start happening. Yeah, that's what we're going to see. Well, there you go. So, well, I do want to say a big thank you there because we've covered a lot of ground on this session. About around personally branded. There's some very powerful lessons for you. Obviously, for listeners, you do need to be, especially those of you doing wanting to do the big exit, you do need to be very careful and make sure you are transitioning now to away from that personally branded driver of your business. And so, Greg, for someone that is thinking about selling down the track, particularly for seven figures, when's the best time for them to reach out to someone like yourself to talk about this?
yeah, I'd say at least 12 months before you want to sell. That is if you're looking to really optimize your valuation, because that gives you enough time to still do things that can really increase your valuation, right? Because most valuations are going to be based on the previous 12 months. So I would say right around that time, like once you're making like between 15 to $25,000 a month, especially if you already have a team of fulfillment that's like kind of taken care of at that price range, come talk to me. Like, let's get you up to 25, 30,000 a month. And now you're in like seven figure territory, right?
All right. I like that one, Greg. That's what we want. That's what we want our members to do. That's what we want our digital investors community to be doing. So there you go, guys. If you want advice around this transitioning out, and you're looking at doing that exit, like Greg said, and you're doing, up around that 20 grand a month, 15, 20 grand a month, reach out to Greg and have a chat to him. There'll be the links in the show notes. And you can also go and check out Greg at empireflippers.com. Greg, I'm sure we'll be seeing you on another podcast to
I hope so.
discuss some other exciting. But I do want to say a big thank you tonight for sharing some of those awesome tips for our listeners. Thank you very much.
Happy.